Like giving birth, once the baby is out, I don't go back and do anything to it.
Right. If he's ugly, you just got an ugly kid.
That's it. I rarely go back and listen to us. Sometimes I'll put it on in the car when my wife's in there if there's something I want her to hear or think she should, or I need some feedback on, but usually I don't listen to it.
I always give it one listen. After it's finished and it finally gets it on Apple Podcasts, I run it.
I feel like it's the most egotistical thing in the world for me to drive around in my car listening to you and me.
You know,
even though, and perhaps I'm biased because it's me, I find it compelling and interesting.
Well, that's why I listen to it.
Because I never know what I'm going to say next, even though I just said it like 4 hours
It's
before.
the strangest phenomenon because we do the show, and then when I listen to it, it's like listening to someone else talking. And I'm like, I'm like, these guys are funny. And then even better is when I try and anticipate, I do this when I listen to regular, what the person says next. Yeah. Sometimes when I'm listening to us, I get it wrong.
I was going to say, I bet you're probably pretty good at it.
You'd think, but I really don't remember.
Well,
but that's why I need this outline.
I was trying to figure out why it sounds so differently when you play it back. Than when you're speaking. Mm-hmm. And I realized it's because, all that internal dialogue you have going on in your head about how should I phrase that? Right. What am I going to say? That's all gone when you're listening back. All you hear is the finished product.
Exactly.
So you hear exactly how much work or lack thereof goes into the finished product. It's quite fascinating.
And we're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Nat X.
And I'm Mike.
And boy, do we have a show for you. Today on RMA, Mike and Nat juggle their jobs, lives, families, recovery, and perform for you like lactose-intolerant clowns with enlarged prostates juggling chainsaws on a unicycle. And we are joined by the RMA Newsroom Editor-at-Large and creator of the recovery news aggregation website Sober Linings Playbook, the incomparable Grant B., otherwise known as G-Money Smooth.
Or as he told us to identify him, Grant from Sacramento.
Yes.
Yes.
We're so excited to have Grant.
Oh, wait. I got to do the...
Yes.
Yes, of course.
So very cool. I always get nervous no matter who we're interviewing. But
and the funny thing is he's nervous about the interview.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you nervous about? You don't have to ask any questions. You just have to answer them.
Grant's like a celebrity to me. I mean,
I know, seriously.
He's ubiquitous and
he's taken his post or his like recovery stuff to like the max, right? Yeah. I mean, he's attacked this thing like a science mission, like like in The Martian.
Yeah, man.
As he said he's going to science the shit out of it.
He's kicking ass, and once in a while he'll be messaging me. He's like, "Oh, I'm sitting in class," and he's getting some certifications. He's furthering his education in recovery sciences and things like that. So very exciting. He's a big part of the show, and looking forward to it.
I mean, that's what you do, right? You have all this spare time, and what do you do with it? Like, if you're like me, you pick up like 90 different hobbies, and you run around like a madman until your wife yells at you to spend some more time at home. Anyway, so visit us at middleagesrecovery.com.
Wait, you didn't? I wrote a new thing at the top.
Welcome to our listeners stateside and around the world. If you are listening to us for the first time from hearing This Naked Mind podcast, welcome. And what took you so long?
Yes.
Thanks. That was that's very good.
I added that.
Now, visit us at middleagesrecovery.com where you can listen to the show, buy merch, and tell us your story. I got a weird email/comment this morning on the Facebook group by one of our newer members.
Right.
Who was like, "Where's my T-shirt?"
No. That's
did she order it?
I think she was just busting our balls.
Oh, okay.
I feel like was that Jen? Maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like when we first were getting the T-shirts, we promised everybody.
You have to stop offering free T-shirts to everybody. We can't. We gotta make some money or bandwidth.
Yeah, so Jen, if I offered you a free T-shirt at some point, I will send it to you. If I didn't, please buy one. We really want to see our.
You can do that through the website.
We want to see our online shopping cart work.
Yeah. Plus, I have a giant box of T-shirts sitting in my living room. My wife's like, "When are you getting that?"
They're
thing
really
out of the
nice shirts. Everybody, please.
I mean, I have to walk that back because my wife did not actually say that to me. This is my perception of what she's thinking. Get the T-shirts out of the living room.
That's it.
And she is perhaps right. They should not be sitting in a giant box in the middle of the living room.
But they are beautiful works of art by the great Jeff D., our designer, printer extraordinaire, who I haven't mentioned on the show in a few weeks. So
yeah, where's he been?
Thinking about you. He's probably busy. He's he's building a business.
A life, and outside of working for recovery in the Middle Ages.
He's newly married, and
well, that explains it.
Yeah, no. So
things to do.
Buy a shirt. Thank you.
Yeah, look for us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all those places. You can get the latest news. Do we post latest news on our private unsearchable Facebook group?
Yeah.
Found easily by searching Recovery in the Middle Ages on Facebook search. Or find the link conveniently at middleagesrecovery.com.
There's a lot going on in that group. In fact, I've come up with a new segment today where I'm going to feature one of our posts and some of the listener comments.
We have so many new segments that never seem to last beyond a show or two.
I've thought about that.
Is this one going to last?
I don't know. You got to throw it up against the wall and see what sticks. I was thinking about listening back to some older shows because I know I had some good ideas, some cool segments that just vanished from week to week. And so if something sticks, like Recovering the News was a new segment that we kept.
Yeah.
Week in Weird was a funny idea nobody liked but me, and now it's the reason people listen.
It's part of the show.
It's the reason.
It's woven into the fabric of Recovery in the Middle Ages.
It's the reason they listen.
So leave us a 5-star review on the Apple thingy. We'll read it on the air because we like hearing people say nice things about us. And yeah, I think we have one this week. Also, tell us your story. We'd still like to hear your stories. Log on to middleagesrecovery.com, scroll down, fill out the Your Story form, and you could hear your story read on the air. And finally, the best way to help the show is to share it with a friend. If you get something out of it, share the love, help grow the RMA movement. And we are a movement. We're a juggernaut of recovery. Yeah. Steamrolling over every other alt recovery show out there.
It's really hard to contain your enthusiasm, Mike.
I'm sorry. It's been a hectic morning, as what you could imagine, but we'll get into that.
Ever not a hectic morning. So, Your Story, I'll read because I'm raising my hand like I'm in third grade. Tell Us Your Story by Brian C. Hi, guys. I found your podcast a few weeks ago, and I've been keeping up since. I found you when I was researching CBD use in recovery. I'll be sober for 9 years as of September 11th.
It's an auspicious day.
It is. I've been using Delta 8 THC for about 6 or 8 months now.
And how's that going?
I was using CBD vapes and sort of got tricked, like our friend Mike here, into the Delta 8, not knowing it has a small amount of THC.
Small? I would argue with the word small.
Well, it has Delta 8 THC, which is a different version of the molecule. I did start to notice a head change when I took more than one puff, and I quickly realized it wasn't the normal CBD I was used to. That being said, I noticed that it helps tremendously with my anxiety, helps me sleep, and overall helps me to have an appreciation of my daily life and my family that I didn't have before. I never got that from drinking a lot of scotch. I take my sobriety seriously.
I had an overall sense of well-being, but it only lasted until the amount of time it took me to pass out and throw up.
And then you take another one the next day. I take my sobriety seriously and have no interest in going back to the hell I've lived through in my 20s. I have no reason to think that this use of Delta 8 would act as a gateway to other drugs or alcohol. Quite the contrary, actually. I don't have an obsession with drugs or alcohol, and I don't use it daily. I got sober through AA and have a large network of friends through the program. I don't tell any of them that I use Delta 8 simply because I think some of them would consider me relapsed. Yes, they would, unfortunately.
Probably most of them.
Yeah. And perhaps pass judgment.
Probably most of them.
All of them. My bigger fear is that I may give the idea to a newcomer that you can safely use THC, which I definitely would not recommend in early recovery. Nobody I've ever met in AA or known currently would approve of that.
Or recommend it.
No. And that's not a bad thing. That's just what they, that's what they believe.
That's their shtick, if you will.
And that's okay. I never used a sponsor much after I went through my 12 steps. I guess in a roundabout way, I'm asking, would you consider this relapse? from what I've gathered listening to your program, you'd probably say that it's an individual assessment, and personally, I don't feel that it is. Though technically, I'm still using mood-altering substance, I'm curious about your thoughts on this matter, particularly in regards to not telling other friends in recovery. Keep up the good work. Thank you for your time, Brian C. Wow. That's an apropos your story, because this is something that we've both talked about on the show. I use Delta. Well, I don't anymore, but it's not because I felt like I was relapsing. I just, I don't know. I just stopped buying it. It was a pain in the ass, and it got expensive. And for me, I mean, I don't consider it a relapse that, I was taking Delta 8 THC. Of course, many will disagree. I don't particularly care. But, I agree with what your assessment is that you know yourself. I mean, I usually tell people, I remember what it felt like to do heroin, fentanyl, crack, cocaine. I remember what my life was like when I was using those things, even when I thought I was using casually. And there is absolutely no comparison to, the feeling and the way that my life was when I did take a Delta 8 THC, either to go to sleep or to help with anxiety. It is not, for me, this is not a relapse, but you're right. Some people in recovery, early recovery, may take that and then they may take it to the next level and then be taking it all the time, and then they're spending all their money buying more of it. I mean, it really depends on you. I mean, I wouldn't say, if you do this, then you aren't sober. Like, there are things that I think I would say that if you do them, you're not sober. But this one, it doesn't sound to me like you are have relapsed.
I think a lot of it depends on the attitude that you have towards what you're doing. I mean, I had episode 12, if you want to hear my experience with Delta 8.
How did you remember that?
Because it's the one that stands out in my mind.
Okay.
Because,
yeah, I guess really good.
Well, because I inadvertently took it not knowing there were psychoactive properties to Delta 8 THC. I probably should have done the research.
Yeah,
but they kind of buried it in the packaging, which it seems like what happened to Brian here. Sort of tricked into the Delta 8 thing, because Delta 8 is THC. It's just a different strain of THC than Delta 9.
Yeah, the technical side of it is something like one molecule is in a different place on the compound.
So I found it a little weird and metallic, the high, but I didn't consider it a relapse because there was no intent, and I really didn't enjoy it. I was kind of really fucked up from that gummy, and for 24 hours.
Really?
So yeah, I was not the same the next day.
That's
and
really
it took me a day to get over it. So
it shows everybody's different with it.
But I will say this though, after a week went by, I started thinking well, maybe since it's not really THC, I should order the oil, and then I can vape it every once in a while. And I actually did. I ordered the oil, and it came.
I ended up vaping it.
And I stuck it in a drawer because as soon as it came, it was far enough from the event that I could look at it and think to myself, now, what was my motivation in going and ordering this stuff? Why do I want to get high? And just the fact that I did it and I was a little sneaky about it. Mm-hmm. I didn't even tell my wife when I was high on the THC, on the Delta 8. I told her later, but at the time I kept it very on the down low. Yeah. And then I went out and ordered more. So
that's addict behavior.
It was addict behavior, which is why I got rid of it and gave it to you.
Right. And then I took my addict behavior. And I didn't have that experience, but it did help me sleep. But a clear sign that it wasn't, getting me high or whatever is when I ran out of it, I didn't think about it. I didn't go get it.
Okay.
I haven't done it. It's just not that.
That is
didn't have an effect on me.
That is one thing that you could look at and say, okay, it's fine because I'm not seeking it out or doing it over and over or whatever. Right. But I don't know. I don't know if that should be the last word on whether or not it's dangerous to do it or whether it's good for your recovery. Because I noticed something that Brian wrote over here that said, I noticed it helps tremendously with my anxiety, helps me sleep. And then this part stuck out to me. Overall, helps me to have an appreciation of my daily life and family that I didn't have before. That makes me a little, makes me go, because
things that make you go,
for me, Like, I want to be able to have that appreciation for my daily life and my family, unmotivated by anything that I put into my body that's going to alter my state of mind.
Right.
Now, if you're using it to sleep, whatever, that's fine. You know, I don't care what you take to sleep. If you take NyQuil to sleep, NyQuil's got alcohol in it. You know, whatever. That's not. It's not a relapse. It's a medicine, and this stuff, you know, right. And this stuff, you know, is a medicine too. But so I mean, I can't tell you whether you should consider it a relapse or not. I would say not, but I think you might want to take a look at the reasons behind why you're so fond of this stuff, as opposed to not doing anything at all. Cool. Exercise. And you know, what's the old, not being an AA guy, I have to reach back in my memory bank to think of some of the more, you know, prescient slogans that they use that I like. And one of them is, "You're only as sick as your secrets." So the idea that you're not telling anybody about this, that also kind of sticks out to me. Now, I understand why you wouldn't want to tell the folks at AA, because
you should look at those relationships too if you're not comfortable talking to them.
Well, I mean, you know, when you buy into AA, you buy into this whole gestalt, right? It's the theory, the practice, the rules, the regulations,
the dogma.
You know,
suggestions,
right? Suggestions,
absolutely
but rarely have they seen people fail who have thoroughly followed their
right.
method.
Especially when the first suggestion is stop drinking.
Yeah. So, so I don't know. I mean, I guess my question is, did you tell your wife? Like, does she know?
Right.
You know, I maybe that's in here and I missed it, but you know, I could see why you would want to tell the people in AA, because, you know, that's not really, you know, kosher with the program. But what about the people around you? You know,
yeah.
So I don't know, man. I mean,
your daily life sounds like it's going the way you want it to. You're happy. You feel healthy. It sounds okay to me, but I'm not going to blanket statement, yes, Delta 8 is not a relapse, because, like, as you guys know, everybody is different. You know, the most valuable tool I ever learned or had from recovery is being honest with myself. If you can really do that, you're going to be okay, because you're going to tell yourself when things aren't going the way you want them and they're out of your control, or your life has become unmanageable. Let's move.
Just one final thought on that.
Yep.
I think when you integrate the things that you're thinking and doing internally with the stuff that's going on externally, then you're in a good place.
Yeah.
If those things are separate, if secrets are being kept, if you know, that sort of thing, then maybe you need to take a look at that. But I don't know, man. I mean, I will still take some CBD every now and again, but I read the label very carefully. So
very good.
Anyway, so we got a new review.
Thank you, Brian C.
Yeah. So this is a 5-star review from, I can't pronounce that.
MJ
Leahy 01.
Right.
Came on Sunday. So relatable. Found this podcast from This Naked Mind. This is the first time I feel like I relate to the authors so well. Authors. The conversation flows, and I really enjoy listening. The sound quality is great, and the show notes are detailed with links.
Yeah, motherfucker. I tell you guys every week, look at the show notes. Mike, like, you know, there's stuff in there.
What about the sound quality?
The sound quality.
They like the sound. The sound quality is all you, man.
Yeah, well, you know, that's my thing. I'm an audiophile. I'm constantly trying to improve the sound of the show. Some people think it doesn't matter. They think it's content is all that matters.
Didn't I say that yesterday?
You did say that. And there's evidence to sort of prove that. You know, just look at Dopey Podcast. I mean, they got super popular when Dave and Chris were just recording on the mic on their laptop. And so that's 100. But my theory is, if they had recorded like we do from day one, they'd have 1 million listeners. I don't know. I think sound quality is important. It makes listening more enjoyable.
I agree.
And
I think if you have bad content, sound quality is not going to save you.
Right. This is a lot of like NPR public radio has amazing sound quality, but it's like dry and boring.
I mean, that depends on what you listen to.
Yeah. All things considered. So thank you so much for that review. Everyone else, go do it. Give us a review. It's really fun to read, and it makes me feel better. So, life update. Sunday Fun Day, something we talk about every week, because on Sunday usually is my day off, and I'm doing all kinds of stuff, and it gives me content. So last Sunday, it was a very special Sunday. Now, some of you may know that I'm a participant in a Presbyterian church. I'm a member. I've been going since I'm a little kid. I also serve on the board of deacons. I'm also a Sunday school teacher. And so I'm very involved. I'm not one of these super overtly religious, finger wagging, telling you people the way they live is wrong type of Christian.
You're the other type.
I was explaining this to a friend of mine yesterday. I said we're more of a loving, kindness, patience, getting together to help the community, and we marry gay couples. It's a very
who does
the Presbyterian Church officially marries gay marriages. They do gay marriages.
Really?
They do. That's the official stance of the Presbytery.
No kidding.
Now, whether or not my pastor's okay with it is another story. But
do you have more autonomy? Do the individual churches in the Presbytery have more autonomy than, say, a Catholic church would?
They do. And in fact, I was just talking to Pastor Jeff yesterday. He stopped by, and we were sort of talking about reopening church and, what we're going to ask our members to do as far as masking. And he got some decree from the Presbytery. I forget which way it was, that everyone must or something, and he didn't like that.
Thou shalt.
He's like, I don't think that there's a federal law, and he was kind of like, he'll do what he wants in the end.
That's interesting. Okay, that's not to get bogged down in Catholic versus Christian doctrinal matters, but
Catholic Protestant. So I went back to church for the first time because I had a big Christian education meeting. We're trying to figure out what to do with the Sunday school, and are we going to be in person? Are we going to be in church because the teachers and the kids and blah blah blah. But I wanted to say that I really, as a kid, I hated going to church because every kid probably hates going to church. It's just boring, and you want to do anything but. But now, and I see my kids in that same spot, so I try and be understanding. But
right.
I forgot how much I get out of just going to a church and sitting in a pew, and men who fart in church sit
Confucius
in his own pew.
Yeah, I was going to go there, but
So it gives me a moment to close my eyes, do a little meditation, a little prayer. And there's also something about being in the same room as a bunch of people who are all kind of, praying together, the prayers of the people, and everybody sort of coming together and giving the nod to the higher power. And it was just a great feeling, and it made me remember how much I miss it. Being part of something, especially I've still been a deacon and a Sunday school teacher, but there's something about being there and feeling, needed and helping in a small church. And, I grew up in it.
Unknown caller.
And I'm really sorry. We're connected to the board because of calling Grant. In any case, it was great to get back to church. And then, of course, those Sundays I don't know if this is the same in every state, but we had sports on Sunday. And so,
thankfully, my kids are not sports kids.
Yeah, you guys are doing Boy Scouts, right?
Ben's doing Boy Scouts. Jack is getting into riflery.
Interesting.
Yeah, I have a lot of redneck hobbies for where we live in the country.
Yeah. Well, you live with some rednecks, but
those are you calling my wife and kids rednecks?
Well, you live across the street.
Okay.
I don't know. What did you do Sunday?
Sunday.
Which
day was Sunday?
I don't know. Didn't you go on a hike or something?
Oh, no, I went to the beach on Sunday.
Oh.
Yeah,
cool.
I took Ben because none of the other kids wanted to go because they were like, it's going to suck. There's no waves. And, of course, the waves were the best.
Yeah.
Best waves, clean water. Me and Ben spent 2 hours at the beach just messing around. Aaron read a book on land. Yeah, it was good. No church, though, although I'm getting...
You're getting church envy?
Well, I'm not getting church envy. I mean, I would go, and my son, Dimitri, my oldest son, inexplicably, I check my Amazon orders every once in a while because you never know what you're going to find in there. And he had ordered a Bible, a Catholic Bible. And I'm like...
the Catholic Bible?
But I don't even know what that means because...
There's extra stuff in there that Protestants don't have.
Is there?
Yeah, the Apocrypha.
Oh, you guys don't have the Revelations? No?
We have Revelations. But
that's the Apocrypha.
Whatever the Apocrypha is, it's a separate thing that the Presbyterian... I should have looked this up. I'm going to look this up, the exact difference, but I know that there is a specifically different thing in the Catholic Bible.
Right.
It's very minor.
I'd like to know why my 17-year-old son is ordering the Bible when he's not, really all that religious. It's. I said to my wife, I said, I think we have stumbled upon the the perfect formula for raising religious children is that you raise them with no religion. Right. So their rebellion goes the opposite way, because I have my 17-year-old is now ordering Bibles and looking at Christian colleges. My middle son is now at a Catholic high school, venerating the host, which he did yesterday. And my youngest son is asking me excitedly when religion class is going to start. My wife and I, who are,
pretty.
I mean, we're theistic. No, I would say we're both theistic, but certainly not really all that attached to a particular God or religion, are looking at this and scratching our heads with some degree of wonder.
Well, it's like my kids. I own a sports store in town, and my oldest son has announced that he's never wants to play sports, and he's not a sports kid. Like if I opened a YouTube store somehow, he would be an athlete. That's how that went. But you guys could listen. This Sunday, we've got a big event at the church. It's called Rally Day. It's the first day of Sunday school, and there's a picnic after the service. And there's going to be Pastor Jeff is getting axe throwing.
Oh,
which you've done.
I remember when he was here talking about that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And they're really doing it. So you guys should come, and then we can bring you into the fold.
I don't know. That's a little weird, man. Showing up for a church picnic when you're not in the church.
I agree.
I did that last weekend, actually.
You went to somebody else's church, but you didn't go to mine.
My friend Danny and I went to over to St. John's Church over by the fish hatchery.
And yes, I do know that. I used to go to meetings there.
There were some owls apparently over there, so we went with our cameras to take pictures of the owls, but we didn't realize that it was their church picnic. So we pull up and we parked, and the deacon or whoever was standing at the door, and then we were walking around the back of the church, taking pictures of stuff. And, I look behind me and there's all these trays of potato salad out, and there's everybody standing there in their nice clothes when the two of us creepy, like paparazzi photographers walking around taking pictures. So, yeah, I already crashed one church picnic. Although no one offered me food or wanted to talk to me about Jesus. So I don't know.
There's a great AA meeting at that church that's been there like 100 years.
Wow, I'll have to make sure to get there.
I think more about, I had such good times going to AA meetings, and I feel like they're all opening back up. Speaking of church, we had more holidays this week. The kids were off again.
Jewish holiday.
Yeah. Right? We have a new, not a new Jewish, it's just brand new. The holiday is Yom Kippur, Hebrew Yom Kippurim, English Day of Atonement, the most solemn of Jewish religious holidays observed on the 10th day of the lunar month of Tishri in the course of September and October, when Jews seek to expiate, that's a good word, their sins and achieve reconciliation with God. So,
is that what we were doing yesterday?
You're supposed to fast. Even though we're not Jewish, my mother was raised to fast on Yom Kippur. So even to this day, she fasts on Yom Kippur.
Does she really?
Yes, she does.
Good for her.
And so it goes sundown from the day prior to I think evening the next night. They differentiate evening and sundown somehow.
I'm a big fan of atonement holidays. I really enjoy a good self-flagellation every once in a while.
Yeah, you flagellating a little bit too much. It's interesting because people don't think of the Jewish religion and confession. It's just not the first thing I think about in any case. And so actually that's what this whole holiday is about.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I only got my Jewish history from my Catholic high school.
Right.
But wasn't the original way it was done was you would whisper the sins into the ear of a goat, and then the goat would wander off into the desert, and that's why we have the term scapegoat. Is that not true?
I don't know. That's the greatest thing I've ever heard.
I assume that I've gone through life assuming that is true.
It might be. I mean, if amongsters out there, look it up, please. I'm very curious to know if that is a true story. We went to Adventureland, which was
a pain in my fucking ass, as you wrote on the.
I wrote, it was a PTA pain in my fucking ass.
What's a PTA? Oh,
Parent Teacher Association. Right. Yeah. So you were there.
Yeah.
Did you have a great time?
I mean, look, it was empty, and an empty amusement park is always a better time than a full amusement park.
It's cool. We've talked about Adventureland before.
Yeah, because they just made us go 3 months ago.
They shut down this whole amusement park just for people in our town. And, of course, I'm like the mayor of this town because I'm in this store, and everybody comes in and out. And so when I go to these things, I'm like hello to like every single, hey, Nat. Kids are going, hey, Nat. And I'm like,
Well,
it's a little disconcerting, you know?
No, you can't just sneak off and pound some beers in the corner.
There's a lot of accountability for me in this.
There is, especially amongst that group. I'm just walking around. I'm like, oh, I fought with her on Facebook. Oh, I fought with that one on Facebook. Yeah, I don't know.
You.
Well, you heard my latest saga with the tree, right? I can't get the town to come and take the freaking trees off the front of my lawn.
Yeah, Mike got banned. His post removed on the parents page.
Well, you started that.
Well, it's very commonplace in our parents group for our town to complain about things that the town is or isn't doing. So Mike made a post about the town, planted some trees on their easement.
Yes.
And they're not taking care of it. And what the hell should I do? And, and then so people were writing some funny things. My wife wrote, bleach works. And then I was like, well, what can I say? I want to say something funny too. And then I just
had to outdo the wife, right?
Right. As I just wrote fire. And then Mike wrote something to reply to that was sort of like...
I replied, I said... That would be fun to watch, but I'd probably burn my house down.
And then that was
And Facebook banned the comment.
Yes. And then you blame me.
And because, Facebook got it backwards. They should have banned your suggestion to set the tree on
got
fire.
away with it.
Not my suggestion to not set the tree on fire. Whatever. I don't care. Okay.
I wanted to...
where are we?
I wanted to talk about the Boy Scouts. And
okay.
I have some... I'm feeling guilty that my son stopped doing Boy Scouts. I mean, not that I was helping you that much to begin with, but I don't know. I feel like I've abandoned you a little bit, but it's really my son's fault, so I'm going to blame him. But you've moved on. You're moving to Boy Scouts, and you're, stressing out.
I don't know about that.
You're going to...
Ben hated it.
Yeah.
He hated his first meeting. He came home and he was like, the kids all hate me. They think I'm this and that. And I'm like, Ben, nobody hates you. They don't even know you. Nobody just meets you and hates you. I mean, maybe that happens. But I think he was feeling just a little overwhelmed by the fact that it was all older kids. And, they split him into a patrol. His friend is in there, his other friend.
It's like military.
Yeah,
right?
And they split those two up. But so I went in there thinking because conversations I've had with the adults in that troop before were like, yeah, why don't you come become an assistant scoutmaster and everything. So I dropped Ben off and none of them say anything to me. And I'm like, at first I'm like, well, this is fucking great. Nobody's going to make me go do training in, some weird place and spend the whole weekend camping with somebody I don't know. And then I started getting a little pissed off. I'm like, well, shit, what does a guy got to do to be tagged as an assistant scoutmaster around here?
Now you're kind of like, what the fuck?
But, I think that's a good thing because I don't want Ben to feel like he's compelled to do it if I'm end up being an assistant scoutmaster. So I'm just going to ride it out and see how he does after a few weeks, and we'll see. Anyway.
That's cool.
But you put on the outline that Mike is pissed that I am not doing it with him. That is not true.
That's my perception.
That is your perception.
I feel like, this is all in my head, but I'm feeling like, man, he feels like I abandoned him, and it's just because my kid doesn't want anything to do with Boy Scouts. But I'm also relieved that I don't have to do it. But I just feel terrible that you've roped yourself into it.
I think it's important to be able to say no.
It is. No is a complete sentence.
It is. And too many of us of the alcoholic addict persuasion have a hard time saying no. So do I have time to become an assistant scoutmaster? I do not. So what I should do is go down there, and if they ask me, say, no, I can't do it. But the flip side of that is I'd like to do something with my son. I'd like to see him more often and so on. So,
Yeah.
You really gotta balance these things.
Kids, am I right?
Yeah. Anyway.
I want to move on to a new segment because I'm always coming up with new segments. And I want to move it along because Grant is waiting patiently for us to call, but I really wanted to get to this. I'm calling it Monkster Wisdom. So in the private group, I'll post things, Mike posts things, everybody posts stuff, but sometimes I post like a thought experiment question, or I say, and then we get some great responses. So what I posted was something I was thinking about this morning. So much of life is a series of temporary situations, feelings, relationships, and jobs. What is one thing in your life you can, with confidence, say is permanent? I was just thinking about permanence and how everything is temporary and how
Right.
I think it was Aaron Moore who said, we were talking about a temporary sponsor. And she's like, hey, like newsflash, they're all temporary because, that's just the nature of existence and relationships. So Jennifer D. said, my love for my children.
Right.
Sarah has said, my children.
Right.
Sally.
Maybe do we want to read the last names?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. That's why I'm saying Sally M.
Okay.
Your relationship with yourself. I like that.
Well, that is permanent.
It is.
Right?
And if you live past your physical death, you're still living with yourself. So that is permanent.
Maybe.
The great Grant G says, I have a somewhat permanent tendency to cling to expectations about what should be permanent. Maybe I need more Buddhism. Amber P says God. Scott W says Sour Patch Kids.
There's one in every crowd.
Yep. Johnny I says Atman and Brahman, spirit soul, that part of me that is pure consciousness.
That would have been my answer.
That's a winner.
But he took it. So I'm happy he took it.
Jim Cougar says tattoos. And I think that was all of them that I fit on the page. So thank you so much for participating. I thought that was an interesting, we got some really great responses, and it made me think, That's what I like about these thought experiments.
It made me think, but I couldn't think up of a humorous and pithy answer for you, so I just let it slide.
Very good.
Yeah.
We're going to try and move on a little bit. I did want to make mention of Sergeant Slaughter informed me that he has lost another coworker to it looks like a fentanyl overdose. And there was a story about it in the New York Post. New York City cop who died on the job overdosed on fentanyl-laced drugs, say sources.
Don't they piss test those guys? Like regularly?
I don't know. And there's an article, but I'm not going to read it. But listen, it's just, it's awful. And especially Sergeant Slaughter has lost a couple other, coworkers, and friends recently. It's dangerous, folks. If you can get away from, even cocaine right now, even when you see a pill that looks like it came from a pharmacy, they're being pressed. People are making fentanyl pills and selling them as Xanax. It will kill you.
It will kill you.
It killed me, and it will kill you. So please be safe out there.
Can you buy one of those tests to test your drugs, like over the counter at a pharmacy?
I don't think so, but I know that people like Tracy Helton and her nonprofit, which I can't remember the name of, she does things like that. She'll send out
Maybe we
fentanyl
should
testing
find
kit,
out
how we can do that.
And put that in the show notes, because
I have Narcan in my shop.
If you have to use Narcan and you're by yourself, that doesn't help you very much.
No, it's for some other junkie that dies.
The better thing
Not
would be
this junkie.
to be able to, like, if you buy a bag of Coke, to be able to test it before you stick it up your nose, right? To see if it's got fentanyl.
That's what they're telling people to do. Even if you're doing cocaine, that you should do that. Last thing I want to mention before we call Grant, I watched I'm always trolling Amazon Prime and other streaming services for new addiction-related documentaries.
Oh, yeah?
Fictional movies, which I call it addiction fiction. I like it because it rhymes. And since I've seen so many and I watch them the minute they come out, I don't usually see new ones. But this new one called Snow Babies, SNO Babies, it's a fiction. It looks like it's low budget a little bit, but when I watched it, it was actually pretty well done. Probably is low budget, but the acting was good. It's the story of a upper middle class girl in some suburban town in America that gets into heroin, fentanyl, and her life just fucking right off the tracks. She gets herself in scenarios like she gets raped, she sells her body for heroin, she even gets, and some of it was really unbelievable. Like, she carries a baby to term. It
sounds like it's a little over the top.
Yeah, it is. But some of it, like when they show her withdrawing, is very realistic. The fact that she carries a baby to term while living in her parents' house and they don't know till it's born in the woods and they find it. It's like kind of fantasy. But if you like addiction fiction and you're looking for something new, Snow Babies. I give it 3 out of 5 stars.
Do you feel sometimes like when those movies go way over the top like that, they run the risk of having the opposite effect because
that's
there
what
were all
it had
these
on me.
just say no, ads and stuff in the 80s, and all that made me want to do was do more drugs, to be like, fuck you, I
don't know.
I don't know.
It had that effect on me. I mean, I was like, that's ridiculous. You lost me. But there's a lot of scenes in it where they show recovery and they show what happens to you. And it can happen to anybody. You can fall into
Was it a happy ending?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Maybe I didn't watch the end.
There you go.
Anyway,
we
should call Grant and move on to the next.
Well, before we call him, I'll do the first part of the introduction because, we don't have a lot of guests on our show.
No,
we don't.
In fact,
there's a lot of other podcasts that have guests like every week.
I get nervous. Right? I don't like it.
Yeah. I was a guest on one of those. You were a guest on one. We were a guest together on Recovery Podcast. But, we don't want to get bogged down in that predictable formula. We don't have to try and spend all week finding a guest that would appeal to our, vast and deep audience. But from time to time, we come across somebody who has a story that we think would benefit the listeners. And so it is with this week's guest, right?
Yeah.
Grant from Sacramento, G Money Smooth, is one of RMA's most loyal supporters. He's one of the moderators of the RMA Facebook group, also the architect behind SoberLiningsPlaybook.com. Familiar with them?
I am.
They're an aggregate of recovery and addiction news that we rely on here at RMA for recovery in the news and to keep abreast of the goings-on in the world about recovery. So maybe let's give him a call.
All right. And without further ado, I am going to call him. Make sure the volume is good.
I still have there's a second.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello. Is this Grant Money Smooth?
Hey, you know what? Happy Recovery Month, and stigma was part of my problem, and so my little step that I'm taking forward today is you can use my last name, Grant Boyken.
All right.
All right. Okay. That's awesome. And thanks for doing this. I understand, having done Annie Grace myself, and I basically was, freaking out the entire time and every minute leading up to it. So I appreciate the level of internal insanity that's probably going on in your head.
Yeah, I wanted to just say to Grant, I want to thank you for all of your help.
Oh, yeah,
man.
for sure.
You have been awesome. I mean, really taking the ball and running with it helps us a lot, and I'm really glad to have you.
It's become my little hobby. Just like you guys have your little hobby, the podcast, helping you guys out is it's something I've really enjoyed doing. So
that's really great. What I like about your story, you sent me like an outline, and it was very thorough. And if I could have one request of future guests, is that you send me a detailed outline of of your story. Besides the obvious appeal of your hero's journey arc, is the fact that the whole angle of the describing yourself as a high functioning alcoholic. I think there's fair number of listeners we have who are able to keep their drinking and using going while at the same time enjoying relative success in a career and having a normal appearing life
and just feeling like shit all the time.
The key word, of course, is appearing, because as anyone who's ever been there could tell you, when you're wrestling with an addiction while you're trying to hold down a professional career, you spend a lot of time on appearances, carefully crafting that appearance. But
I think you hit the nail on the head there. There's a double-edged sword in a couple ways about the whole high-functioning thing. And the first one is, how high are you actually functioning?
Well, right.
Yeah, I look back on my career, and I just think, it was the last 5 years, it was sort of daily. Not because I wanted to have fun or party at work. It's just I sort of lost the ability to, I forgot what it was like to go through the day without drinking. And clearly not at my best, but yes, going under the radar. So, but that's a problem in itself, because then it's hard for you when you finally should be admitting you got a problem. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hard when it really hasn't come and bit you the way that it has with others. And it's easier to say, well, I'm not like them. This hasn't happened to me. No DUI, no job loss, until,
right.
You're high functioning, you're flying under the radar until you're not. And that's my story.
But it does allow you to carry on far longer than you would if you were, the thing about moderate to heavy alcohol use is we're very good at hiding it for long periods of time.
Yeah, or we think we are.
Well, but I mean, if you're smoking crack, it's much harder to go to a professional job and hold your shit together.
For the record, I smoked crack. Well, I was the marketing director for a company, and I think the boss was on to me one time because I'd run out to grab it. You know, the guy would meet me. I'd come back into my office, and I would go in the corner and just hit it a couple times. And then one time, one of the owners was like, he's like, "You cooking in there?" And I don't know if he was kidding or serious, but I was like, "Oh shit, they know." You know,
that doesn't smell like a cigarette.
But crack will take you out.
Yeah, and if your choice is vodka, like mine, it goes in a water bottle on the treadmill at the workplace gym in the morning. It goes with you in a way that a glass pipe does not.
Right.
Were you running and taking pulls off the vodka bottle? Because that is some next level shit right there in terms of hiding.
So I have less energy now, and I look back and I get exhausted at what I was doing, but I was not about to let anything get in the way of my work and life routine. So I would get up at 5:30. I would go run on the treadmill or along the river near work, and then I'd shower and get to work on time. So all of those things that people tell employers to look for signs of addiction, you know, missing days of work and not being, you know, none of that was going to happen with me. You know, eventually it was people smelling it on my breath a couple of times. So.
I mean, that's really interesting. I did the same thing. Like you know, I'm a runner, so I would just run. I would run through the hangovers. I'd run half drunk, you know.
God, that sounds horrible.
Yeah. Well, but you know what? But there was also that thing in the back of your head that's like, well, I'm running, man. I'm healthy. I'm doing something healthy. You know, how bad could it be?
Yeah, it's anyway, like having a Diet Coke with your Big Mac value meal.
Yeah, and just one thing
I do that all the time.
I think my mantra is, you know, what most people think of as a hangover, you know, people like us thought of as the morning.
Yeah,
but
right.
I think your story's a little bit different because you weren't starting out with alcohol with your morning coffee, right? You didn't do that during the day.
No. I lived for 5 o'clock basically. But I was able to keep it out of the mornings, unless I was at a conference and they was drinking at noon. But I was never a morning guy. Let's reel it back a little bit and start a little further back. So, well, first of all, how much time do you have now? Like, when was your last drink?
Oh, I thought you meant how much time for this interview.
Oh, no.
Time. But no, time since my last drink is my sober date, you know, and I have several, but my sober date is August 10th of this year. I hit a year.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah, so I got about 13 months.
Sorry, I have these, so I have to use them.
All right.
Awesome. That's fantastic, man. And so you're in Sacramento now, but are you from Sacramento?
From Wisconsin originally, and then moved out here for graduate school in my 20s, met the woman that I married, and my life is out here now.
Wisconsin is probably pretty different culturally from California, I would imagine.
Slightly?
To put it mildly. Yeah. I listen to friends and wonder, how did you get that accent? But I guess I've lost my accent, or I like to think I have over time. But yeah, and it was, you know, just like every workplace, and you've talked about this, Mike, well, I came from a really high, you know, an alcohol culture, marketing, attorney, picket, but, you know, I think any state's like that. But I think in any of the national surveys of like bars per, you know, the bar to church ratio or whatever you want to choose, Wisconsin's pretty high. And, looking back at my childhood, it was, you know, my first drunk was at 12 and ended up in the hospital. And, you know, so that was probably a harbinger of things to come. But, you know, I don't think it was everybody, but certainly the people that I chose to be around through middle school and high school, it was all about procuring alcohol for the weekend and then drinking it when the weekend came around. It was, you know, and then when I look at, I'd never been to a high school reunion, but I'm on my Facebook group for my high school people, and you know, the reunions are all centered around alcohol, drinking on the golf course, drinking at the sports bar, and so you know, it's a very drinking culture, but I think a lot of places are, so I don't know how different Wisconsin is than any.
Yeah, it seems ubiquitous. I mean, like we always say, you know, you go to Chuck E. Cheese's for a kid's party and you can get Bud Light on tap.
Yeah. I mean, I thought Long Island in the 80s was an especially drunken, cocaine-infested place, but I suppose in the 80s a lot of places were drunken and cocaine-infested.
I feel like a lot of places today are. But all the cocaine is
and now you go to the movie theater, and what a, like, like, can I pretend I'm going to the bathroom and get one of those drinks and down it and go back and sit with my family? That was a calculation that used to run through my head.
There's alcohol at movie theaters?
There is.
In California, we got some. I think it's becoming more common.
Wow.
It's hard to know. I mean, who's been to a movie theater lately, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah, I was the master of if we were doing a family function or out somewhere, even at a restaurant, and I was pretending not to drink, it hit the bathroom, so to speak, and then quick to the bartender, 2 shots of tequila, and I'd down him, go to the bathroom, and come back. So if I had the movie theaters had that option, man, that would have been bad.
And isn't it liberating not to have to do that work of thinking, when am I going to be able to sneak it in?
100%, and I always notice it. I always remind myself. I'll say, this is one of those times that I would have snuck. Like I was at a Yankees game like a couple of years ago, and I was thinking to myself, man, I went to the bathroom and I was like, the last time I was at Yankee Stadium, when I went to the bathroom, I downed like 2 20-ounce beers in 5 minutes.
You got to drink a lot of beer at Yankee Stadium because it's watered down.
And it's $30 a cup.
I think that's every baseball team.
Yeah, probably. Ahead. Did I hear you say that the first time you drank at 12, you ended up in the hospital? That's an interesting story.
Yeah, and it's funny when you're in the rooms of recovery, as we say, I don't know about you, but my head always turns when somebody say they first drank at 15 or 16. I'm like, wow, you held off. Because I think it is pretty common. But parents listening out there, the earlier your kids start, the more likely they are to develop a problem later on. But I was with a friend of mine and a girl who lived in the neighborhood just said, hey, I could get you guys a bottle of brandy. And my friend said, sure. Not that I wasn't culpable in that. So we paid for a bottle of brandy, and she threw in a beer, and I hid it in my tree fort. So there I am, straddling adulthood and childhood, drinking beer in my tree fort. And when I drank that first beer, I thought all was right with the world. I was alone up there. I came in for dinner. I was relaxed. It was Memorial Day weekend, I want to say 1981.
Wow.
And my friend came over. We drank in a field, and neither of us had drank before, and so we didn't have any sense of when to stop. Finished the whole bottle.
Yeah.
My brother found us, went to the hospital, stomach pumped, and should have taught me a lesson.
I was going to say,
you're 12, and so those lessons don't sink in.
Did it put a crimp in your stride, or were you just like, I got to do some more of that.
I got to get better at that.
Access was an issue, obviously, at 12, even in Wisconsin. But it did, I think it was the beer that I had a couple nights before my friend and I drank that I thought, you know what, there's something to that. It really made me relax. And so I think it sort of set the stage so that when I would have access, and that got more frequent as I got older. And then, frankly, I worked at my kids who will listen to this will laugh because I tell stories about it all the time, but we lived in the suburbs, and there was a horse farm on the edge of our suburban development. And I worked there all through high school, but there was always an older guy there, always good for pot or for buying beer for the weekends. And so, access became easier as I got older. But I think that first drinking sort of set the stage for, this is something that I understand and makes me feel good.
I recently found out that not everybody has that reaction to the first drink. Like for me, I felt like I had found like the key to all of life's problems with the first beer, but other people don't have that experience.
Yeah, interesting. I was just listening to Amy Dresner and Joe Schrank's podcast, Rehab Confidential, and I hadn't listened in a while, so I was catching up. And the most recent episode, they got the doctor, can't think of his name, who was like, the architect of getting naltrexone, kind of developed and tested. And he had some very interesting facts. And if you haven't listened to that, listen to it. It's really interesting. But
I did, and not to betray you guys, but I'm occasionally in touch with those folks.
Oh,
too,
no kidding.
They have some great guests on there. So
really,
nice.
I mean, I was like, wow, this guy is really sharp. And he was talking about kind of like how when you can predict, he said, whether or not someone will be more likely to be an alcohol, have substance use disorder by the way they react to like how they feel after having, what did he say, like 3 beers? If you have more energy and it makes you want the fourth, then you are probably going to be an alcoholic. And if you're one of these people who just drink 1 or 2 and get tired and don't want any more, then you're probably not going to be, is what he said.
I wish somebody had told me that.
I was listening to that just yesterday. I was finishing that one up, and that really resonated with me. If you get energy from it, or probably if there's other positive effects, like, hey, I'm more comfortable in a social setting, if it has all those positive benefits rather than just it makes me tired. And I thought, that's me. And like I was saying before, when I look back at how much I used to accomplish ineffectively, but being drunk all day and or buzzed all day, drinking all day, it did something for me, and that keeps you going. So I think there's something to that.
Yeah,
so,
that's what naltrexone or Vivitrol. I always get naloxone mixed up with naltrexone, but that's the whole base science behind naltrexone. Is it takes away when you're on it and you do drink, because you're an alcoholic, you must have a drink, but when you do, that reward stops. Mm-hmm. You still can feel drunk. I remember drinking enough to get some kind of buzz when I was on Vivitrol. But the idea is, they call it pharmacological extinction, where you...
a lovely term.
Yes, it's very catchy, where you don't get that reward anymore, and therefore you don't crave that drink. And maybe that's what happened to me, because I did a serious course of naltrexone and Campril, and maybe, I don't know, maybe that's what did it. Maybe that's why I don't crave alcohol.
Yeah.
You don't get the reinforcement.
Just jumping in there. Yeah, Vivitrol is the brand name of the like long injectable
it's a big
naltrexone.
needle.
But I had the naltrexone pills, and I found what it did for me is it made me need to drink more,
right.
And then made me think each morning, maybe I shouldn't take this pill, because then I can get the effect with less. And so I'm in several sober Facebook groups, and there's this woman from the UK in one of my sober groups, and she's just holding out hope. The National Health Service, and she's in Britain, will get her naltrexone and get her on the Sinclair method. Meantime, she's always reporting in with day ones, and I just a private message saying, don't hold your hope out for a pill, because it didn't work for me. But there is, and one of the things I like about putting together those news clips is really, it forces me to pay attention to what's going on. But the science around it is fascinating. And just a few things they're doing. One is Mayo Clinic is doing this research to figure out if there's genetic markers that will indicate which people are better served by things like a Campro or naltrexone.
Yeah,
it's fascinating stuff that they're doing.
Cancer research that's sort of what they're trying to do with cancer, right? To treat it, where that you get your genetic makeup will indicate what treatment will actually work, and they can do that with every disease. That would be something.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great way to apply science too.
And addiction is not one of those orphan diseases, that shouldn't get attention. It's huge, but I think everything you hear, and they were talking about this on Rehab Confidential, that historically doctors have not wanted to treat addiction because it feels hopeless, but there's hope that a new generation of doctors is really more interested in learning about it.
So first drink at 12, continued to drink. Did you start doing anything else? I think it was any other drugs part of your story from a young age?
You weren't a straight juicer, as they say.
No, I mean, it all comes back to juicing, and that's how it started. But there was pot through my later years of high school and in college, and that was a pretty regular thing. And I used to pat myself on the back for not drinking as much as those University of Wisconsin kids. But dope all day. And then, I think I've shared with you, I'm not as big of a deadhead as you, I don't think, Mike, but I did have some friends from the East Coast, from the tri-state area, who introduced me to things like psychedelics. And, I had a couple of years where I went to probably 12 dead shows or so. And
did you catch any of those Alpine
really
Valley shows?
The Alpine what?
Any Alpine Valley shows?
Only one at Alpine Valley. That's sort of like the maybe the Midwest version of the New Year's shows at Oakland Coliseum, I guess. But it's like a mecca but only one there ever. And but yeah, I never liked the psychedelics. Made me much too introspective, and it was exhausting. Made me do this. Maybe I had moments of joy, but mostly it was hard work to sort of stay sane and say, all right,
that's the thing.
I'm okay. This will end.
Right. I mean, that's the thing about LSD is like, having taken it a fair amount of times since I was sort of on the Dead tour for 5 years there, like the first like 10 or so times it was great because you're just riding out on the hallucinations and
you're exploring.
Yeah,
it's like the world is different.
But like the 11th through the 20th time when you start doing incessant like navel gazing and wondering about the relationship with your parents and stuff and like how much of an asshole you are, it's like all right, enough of this. I'm done with that.
That's where I went always.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't like it. Yeah, like what kind of a person am I? What was my parents?
And again, I mean, how many times do you have to do that before you're like, maybe this drug isn't for me? I need something a little with a little more oomph to it.
It's funny because that was the last time I did acid. Honestly, I remember having this thought. I did it a lot in high school. I was at a boarding school and I would do it. I somehow got acid and I did it a lot, like every weekend. And then I remember distinctly there was one time I'd done it and I was in one of those modes where I'm being introspective and I'm thinking about myself. And I came to the conclusion that if I wanted, what I wanted in life to happen, I couldn't do acid anymore. And literally I never did it again.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Well, it worked for you then.
Yeah.
That's why the stories about people microdosing on psilocybin and or taking ayahuasca as a cure for addiction, like more power to anyone who that works for, but I ain't going there.
I don't want anything to do with it. No. Yeah.
So you went to
University of Wisconsin,
Madison, and did you graduate?
Did graduate 4 years, and then took a little time off, and I had done an education abroad programs in Hungary, and then I went back and worked for a nonprofit there doing an educational program.
How did you find the drinking culture in Europe?
In Eastern Europe, I think you got to distinguish. That's when, it wasn't uncommon for workers on their way to work to stop at a little kiosk and get a little Pepsi with a little red wine mixed in it. And then I worked in an office that was integrated with with Westerners and Eastern Europeans. And, the people from Western Europe or the U.S. would kind of criticize the Hungarians for going out and drinking at lunch. And I thought, what a lovely tradition, and years later I would take that on and then some, but it was an interesting cultural experience working together in that office.
Years later, when you looked back on that, as a justification, were you thinking, oh, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm just drinking like Europeans? Because that
at a certain point, no matter what, how deep you're into it and how much you try and rationalize, you realize that when you got a little bottle in your desk drawer and you're hiding it, or I had a closet in my office where, I realized at some level that I had gone beyond.
Airplane bottles I used to stuff. I picked up 10 airplane bottles.
That's too expensive. You buy the cheap, big plastic jug, keep it in the garage, and then fill other bottles from that one.
Oh, that's a good strategy.
To go all day. Yeah. I find out it's not that uncommon. The vodka in a cheap plastic jug.
Oh, yeah.
Garage,
Yeah. Iron City vodka used to be a favorite of mine. I don't know if they sell that in the Midwest or California.
I finally stopped finding bottles in my house. There was a long time after I got sober that my wife would periodically be like, I found another can or another bottle. And I was like, I really don't remember that. And she didn't believe me at first, but then as the years went on and things would still pop up, cleaning the house. What the hell is this? But finally, there's no more bottles, I hope. But yeah, I was a hider for sure.
I was a hider, but I was very prepared and very conscientious about that. So I had one spot. And when one came in, one went out. And so, because I didn't want the same thing to happen that happened to you.
Yeah.
Years later, you got bottles coming out of the woodwork.
Oh my God, it's nonstop.
So in your 20s, you were still drinking, quote unquote, normally.
Yeah. Yeah, and I always told myself, that as I look back at my story, I always think, I was pretty normal during my 20s and even my 30s. Even though it started 30s, I started hiding it and drinking in the evenings. But then when I look back, there's always sort of a problematic relationship with alcohol. And one of the stories I think that highlights it best, and this is something that doesn't happen to everybody. So I was, when I was on my education abroad program, I was traveling alone over the winter break, and I was in Seville, Spain, and walking through a park. I looked like a tourist, obviously, and this older gentleman came up and started talking to me. His English was about as good as my Spanish, but we fumbled through a conversation. He asked me to dinner. So we go to this dinner. It's on the edge of a park. It's like a big banquet hall. It's like 6 o'clock. So if you've ever been to Spain, 6 o'clock is way early.
It's very, very early.
And we're in this big banquet hall that probably seats 200, and it's just us at a table and like 3 wait staff hovering around us. And the meal was quite good, and we got wine, and I thought it felt a little weird, felt a little off. But then the bill came, and it was like, I peeked at it, and it was like $200. But he was, big shot, going to pay for it all. And then he asked me to go to a bar, and what am I going to do? It's a $200 dinner. Mm-hmm. And then I woke up in his car outside of town. There was a sign that said like 4 kilometers to Seville. And, so worst date ever because I passed out in the car. But I look over and you know what? He was having a fine time because he found a way to pleasure himself. So I got out of the car and just told him I'm walking back to town. I probably could have used the walk anyway, and probably not the best to be riding with him. But I got back that morning and just, felt awful about what happened. Thought, how did I let that happen? And
did he GHB you, or was this just straight alcohol?
I sometimes look back now that we know about that stuff. I don't know because I didn't at the time. I did not have a history of blacking out or passing out, and it's just a wild experience. It should have been another lesson, right? Just like the time I was in the hospital, but. Didn't learn. But that's what, when I look back at my story and say I drank normally in my 20s, I'm like, yeah, there's signs, there's indications that something wasn't right. But I thought it was funny. At the time, I had a roommate who was a woman, and we met up in Amsterdam before heading back to Hungary. And when I told her the experience, hoping for some sympathy, her response was, good. Now you know what it feels like to be a woman.
Right.
Okay.
Wow, that's a story, all right.
I mean, you got to work that out in therapy, or have you discussed this with your clinician?
I think I've processed it, and I like the Dopey model of. And for those who don't know, Dopey is a podcast, a podcast and a Facebook community, the Dopey Nation. But that humor is super important as a way to look back on things and move past them. And so I like to think I processed that one. I talked about it here on your, with your audience. So.
Yeah, humor is huge for us. And when I do some ads for our show, I have a couple of really well-performing ads, but what I put on it is, I don't know if you've seen it, addiction recovery comedy podcast, because I'm trying to say it all in, as few words as possible. And then we'll get comments on it. And there's always a couple of people who are like, this is not funny.
Nothing funny about addiction.
I lost my nephew, which is horrible. And then usually it's someone who isn't in recovery who gets offended because they don't realize that Gallows humor, I mean, that's like one of the first things I learned going to AA is that we can laugh about this. And then not only can we laugh, we should laugh because it's medicine to laugh, and it helps you process things. I mean,
it is. And just this, you probably haven't seen it, but just this morning, I'm a moderator, as you know, because you made me that for your Facebook group. And I approved a post from a guy named Rob who, he's coming up on his first weekend of sobriety. And,
nice.
He's got no program with an MM and an E, so I guess he's one of our friends from across the pond. And, he found the podcast and then found This Naked Mind through the podcast. So if the humor brings people in and then ultimately helps, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
We still take it seriously, of course.
I mean, the reason it's so funny to us is because we're here, we survived, and we're kind of on the other side. You know? I can see how people who are still perhaps not where we are thinking, well, like that one woman who's like, I lost all of my husbands to addiction. And I'm like,
all of them?
All of them?
Like, wow.
You know, I had to sort of bite my, because I was like,
that's funny right there.
Should I leave like some snark to this woman's comment? And I was like, no, I'm not going to. Yeah, I mean,
but you got to laugh. We have to laugh, otherwise, what's the alternative? Just crying all the time? I've cried enough.
And if you talked to me a year and a half ago, I would not have found the humor in it. My life, as I knew it was over, and partly, and you know, I'm mixed like you guys are, but the 12-step program really helped me to move on from the past, focus on now, and not worry so much about the future. And now I'd like to say I moved to the point where I can laugh about it and see that it's healthy.
Yeah, there's something about being around all those other people who, you know, they'll tell their stories and you know that they've come from worse or bad situations, and there they are moving on with their life, hanging out together, laughing about it, and it gave me a lot of comfort just to be in a room with people who are kind of like, it's okay, man. You don't ever have to, and my favorite is you don't ever have to feel that way again. That one always stayed with me. And that camaraderie, we read that clip out of the big book about, being, like you survive a boat crash and you're all on the lifeboat together. You're all from different walks of life, different stations in society, but you have a camaraderie with these people because you survive together. And it's that kind of thing that it really it helps a lot of people.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, no, there is this definite common bond that puts us together, and I think there is something really positive about people who come through, kind of the worst like that. They discover a lot about themselves, and if they're able to move on, they have a great story and a great future ahead of them. I do a little bit, because I got so interested in this, I'm taking some counseling classes, and I lead a group session twice a week with people, completely different life situations than mine, but it's a drug and alcohol counseling program for fathers trying to regain or retain custody of their kids. And
wow,
we have such a 90-minute session twice a week, same group of people both nights. We just have such connection, even though we all come from different walks of life and different experiences, because we're battling the same stuff. So.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you actually, Grant, about what you're doing, because I'm I'm sort of like, I'm not clear because I'm so scattered and I haven't read through all the emails.
But I have found it incredibly confusing in California. It's probably that way everywhere. There's different nonprofits that sanction treatment training programs, and there's just a morass, an alphabet soup of stuff. But I found a program. It's an accredited nonprofit that accreditates other training programs, and they have a program to work toward being a certified alcohol and drug counselor in California.
Cool.
And Saturday classes, pandemic thinking, I thought, what the hell else am I doing on Saturdays?
Yeah,
so I started that. And then through that, I found out about this opportunity in the evenings. And when I started there, they said, oh, you should be a registered alcohol and drug technician. I said, what's that entail? Paying a fee and taking a self-driven ethics course. So I did that. And, just sort of plugging away. But, I don't know where I want to take it. My background is in public policy and legislation, and I'd love to work in that area, but learning a lot, doing the counseling education, and it's enjoyable. It's just, I can't make a leap from my normal career right now because I got 2 kids in college.
Right.
And, but it's sort of a post-pension, employment plan for me, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking about that once I finished college after 25 years. I was really thinking about, and the same thing. I was looking at, in New York, we have a CAC.
Yeah, I've heard you mention that before.
CASAC is the New York standard. It's also, besides getting a master's in mental health counseling, you can actually get a CASAC without that. And then there's different levels, and it's run by the state. and it's a lot of hours. You have to do like residency hours and stuff. But then there's other ones, like you said, Recovery Mike, who is a friend of the show. He's also on Dopey Nation. He's got he had a certification for like a peer counselor. I can't remember.
We have something similar to that, and I've heard you mention that. It's like a weekend thing in New York, and your wife is supportive. You should go for it.
Yeah, I would love. I mean, if nothing else, then like the local outpatient place in our town where I went to, actually, and I have a great relationship with them. I still send some of the homeless guys or that come in who are struggling with addiction. I always tell them, go see Barbara, tell them I sent you, and they lost a couple of employees, and I'm like, if I had like that peer counselor thing, I think that I could at least like volunteer in an official capacity, and maybe that would be good for my recovery.
Another thing to consider is, they're always looking for help. And so if you go to like an outpatient program, you could start on a volunteer basis. And many people in my class did that. And then they tell you, hey, here's what we need you to do. Take this training, get this certification. Yeah. And they kind of, because there's a lot of turnover in that field. People burn out or they
relapse.
Yeah. And so if you stick with it, they would want to, you'd be an investment for them, and they,
you don't do it for the money. You definitely don't do it for the money.
No. And the other thing I should say, because I got people in my class, and there's a big split over this, do you need lived experience? And I think there's some value in the lived experience of going through addiction. But I always felt when people start beating up on the quote unquote normies in our class, I always say, look, if I have a brain tumor, I'm not necessarily going to go to the guy who had a brain tumor. I'm going to go to the surgeon who does brain tumor surgery.
Right.
And so I think anyone who has empathy and an aptitude for listening and listening and education can do that work.
Yeah, I mean, Grant, you and I were talking about this over Messenger last week, and it's one of those things that's come up a lot. And I've worked with people that helped me, who were recovered alcoholics and addicts, and others that were strictly like academicians, type of things, medical doctors. And I've heard that, people, I don't trust anything this person says because they haven't been through it. They don't get it. They don't understand. And what I always remind people is the AA program, borrows heavily from a Dr. Silkworth and Carl Jung, both of whom are not alcoholics. But do we get something out of their insight, knowledge? I mean, absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're doing an awful lot of stuff in your recovery, which is awesome. How did we get to this point? Like, I don't think we got to the end of the story.
We didn't get to my rock bottom story.
Yes.
Where's the rock bottom, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, so, fits and starts, like many, I didn't have just one bottom, but I can tell you that the biggest bottom. It's funny how much we talk about our asses, but, yeah.
Talking about Jennifer Lopez.
Do you have a low bottom? Do you have a high bottom?
Do you have a J-Lo bottom?
Yeah. But, no, I don't know. It's big. So, I was discovered at work in spring of 2019, and I thought I could do it on my own, and then couldn't. So I told my wife, went into outpatient program, thought I was doing well. I did a trip, late February, early March of 2020. I was in D.C. for a conference, so Trigger conference. Cocktail hour, traveling alone in the airport. But I was so proud of myself. I did great, met up with a coworker there, loving sobriety. And then the apocalypse of the pandemic hits, and all my sober groups are like, I freaked out and I went out. And that sort of it gave me my justification to kind of let it go. Things were stressful at work, I was in a leadership position, trying to work with the team to get 1,500 people to be able to do their jobs effectively from home, turn on a dime like that. And it was nuts. And I thought, well, I'm going to be working at home anyway. So I drank. I was confronted at home by my wife. It was not pretty. She left. And then in my clear thinking, in my drunken state, I thought, well, I don't want to be here when she gets home. So I left. And in a bout of blackout driving, I ended up calling a friend who struggles or who understands addiction. And, but the problem is that friend was also a coworker and a subordinate in my chain of command who was concerned about me. And so she, rightly brought it up with HR, and it became a thing. It became a formal investigation. And because I was in a leadership role and a public-facing role for this organization, as they say, I played the tape forward, and I thought, you know what? The best thing for everyone involved is for me to exit. And, that meant, I had some success in my career, and all of a sudden, one of the pinnacle of my career, I have a black mark to explain, like, why did you leave that? And immediately I went and, I spent about 6 weeks unemployed before I got a job filing unemployment insurance claims for our state department that does that, because, there was huge demand during the pandemic. So thank God I found a job. But yeah, I knew I was going to have this thing to explain. Why did you go from this, executive level job down to this entry level job? But that entry level job was perfect. It was, they
recovery job, we call it, right?
It was, and it was right sized, and it allowed me to listen to podcasts. I discovered you guys and all these others, and I learned about addiction, and I focused on myself. And I was happily taking orders and direction from people much younger than myself.
That's
and I was proud of myself for being able to do that. And then, I just persevered and kept trying. And I would tell my story at interviews, like, here's why I lost my last job. And I got more comfortable telling it, and eventually landed another very mid-level management position. It's another right-sized job, but also it's hard. Some ways harder than an executive job, but I'm liking it, and I've discovered I got to keep myself busy, and so that's why I like putting together new news clips for you guys and more. The distribution has kind of grown, and then doing the counseling too, and it's been great.
That's really cool.
So the early days of your recovery, what did that look like? Did you go to AA meetings, 12-step? What?
Yeah. So the first serious attempt, I went to some AA meetings, but I really tried to keep it hidden somewhat, or keep it on the side of my life rather than front and center, because I didn't want to remind my parents, my wife and my kids about what I was going through. But then the second time is like, why hide it? Because I had tanked a lot, and I felt it was awful. It was an awful period in my life where my son, who was studying engineering at a fine university, said, he volunteered to quit, go to community college to save money for the family. It broke my heart. Yeah. And so I was in this place of desperation, and I don't know if my wife didn't know what to do with me at the time. And so I moved into a sober living house for 2 months, and I doubled down on I was unemployed for about 6 weeks. And so they say 90 meetings in 90 days. Well, I surpassed that because I had Zoom and unemployment on my side, and really hit it hard with the 12-step program. And I still go. I've got a sponsor, and I go to a couple of meetings a week. One of my favorite is a Cocaine Anonymous meeting.
Yeah,
I've never touched that stuff.
Cocaine
It's
Anonymous.
a good group.
I love Cocaine Anonymous. I only know them.
What makes them attractive to alcoholics who don't do cocaine?
Well, it's
they asked me to speak once, and I like them, and they feel like the forgotten stepchild of the 12-step program.
Yeah, they're great.
And
they use the big
book. So they're a little less. It's sort of big booky, but it's more NA, and they're a little less. This is the way it's got to be, because they're a little cut out of the mainstream big 12-step group. And so I just feel like it's a little more, I don't know, it's just different, and it feels right. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
so anyone out there struggling to find the right meeting, if you say it doesn't work for you, just like the gym doesn't always work for everybody who wants to lose weight. Try a different one,
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Never stop. There's something out there to help you. And one of my final questions, because we're running long, we still have to do Recovery in the News, your favorite. But
look forward to that.
I wanted to know how, you've got a year, And it seems like, just yesterday probably, but your life is completely different. But how do you handle, if you get them at all, cravings, or occasionally you find yourself in scenarios where you would normally be reaching for a drink and maybe your muscle memory is still like reaching for the drink, and so like, how do you stop yourself? Like what tools do you use to put a quick stop to that inner addict who's yelling at you?
That's a great question. I mean, one of the things is sort of the longer term solution is always keep the recovery front and center. So, the counseling, the going to meetings and stuff, it builds that, alternative muscle memory, I guess. But fortunately, the longer out I am, the less the cravings are there. And just a little aside, I still, because my mom paid for a second year, I've been using SoberLink, which is one of those at-home breathalyzer kits.
Tell us a little bit about that, because that came up in your a couple of your emails to us, and I thought it was really interesting that you had volunteered for it.
Yeah, wow.
Yep, it's forced accountability, and so it's a device that works with an app on your phone. And I have, standard is 2 tests a day. I set it for 3, so I have a morning, a noon, and a evening test. And I get a reminder, I do the test, the results go, well, my wife got kind of sick of it, so it gets a lot of text. So the results now go to my brother, and my brother's got an agreement that if he gets it and he gets a positive, he'll contact her. And so that's like built in, but that's not going to work long term, because eventually, that would go away. But
is it expensive?
So it's about $400 for the device, and then about $200 a month. So it's not for everybody, but a lot of people do it through probation or through an insured program. So
thank God they didn't have that when I was on pro. All I had was the the blower in the car. Wow, I mean, that's taking a lot of responsibility, and I hear you. Like, I was in outpatient treatment for so long because I kept relapsing and having to go to new ones for my probation, that it was part of my life. I was being tested 2 times a week and breathalyzed periodically by my probation officer. And as the end drew near, and even though I had been doing that for like 5 years, and not even successfully, because I was still drinking and using and getting caught, but when I did get right, and I was about to get off of probation and out of, graduate the outpatient, get my car back, I had that same worry, like, shit, like, what am I going to do? Like, once I don't have this lattice work of like support and accountability, how am I going to create that for myself? How am I going to, but luckily, you just jumped into the deep end, and I said, look, this can go one of a couple of different ways. Which way do I want it to go? And
but the other thing is, if I'm talking to somebody else, what do you do for a craving? Know that it will only last 15, 20 minutes. So distract yourself.
Push
do something
through
else. You can't tell someone in the early days, well, just call somebody. No, because you want that drink so bad. If you call somebody, they're going to tell you not to drink.
Right.
So.
Right.
And then you might do it anyway and feel shittier. But if you're looking for the solo option, just try doing a chore that you haven't gotten to, and that'll take your mind off it. So.
Yeah.
And then one other thing, you didn't get any listener questions for the guests, right?
No, unfortunately not.
I wanted like a funny
question. Could I at least give a shit? But there were several people who liked it, and so I'm going to thank Maggie, Una, Jeff, Jennifer, and Jelly for at least liking the questions, because hopefully they're listening and they can appreciate the shout out. It's a nice little community you guys have built there.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's so cool, and I love that it's our little thing, and we're all kind of building it together, and it's fun for us to participate in it, and great to know that you're on there. And
anybody out there who wants to join in, just send us a request. I think Nat, you're pretty diligent about sending out invitations to the community, right?
Well,
I think that goes out.
I invite people to the main page, and then it's sort of the private group is tricky but yes, I'm really trying to get people to join who want to join, who want to participate, and
I've also had a lot of people reach out to me by Messenger who maybe aren't comfortable posting on the main page, but they'll send me a message, and that's another way to get in contact with us if you want to speak to somebody.
Yeah,
but, I don't want to be one of those guests who overstays my welcome, and you're trying to shuffle me off the phone. But I will say, it would be, because that's always an awkward moment, isn't it? But
shouldn't you be going?
I will I'm here, damn it, I'm going to take my time. If somebody started up, I'm not going to do it, and you guys are probably stretched, but if somebody wanted to start up Zoom meetings in that group, private Zoom meetings, I would love it.
It's been something I've been thinking about.
I have to say that...
I mean, it could start organically. You guys wouldn't have to do that. You guys do a lot. So.
I would love that.
Throwing that out there to the monksters.
Yeah, man. I would love that. In fact, I actually typed out a message to you that I never sent because I got this... Sometimes I get in a manic phase and I get all of these ideas. And I've learned that when I'll type a bunch of stuff to somebody that I think I really need to say to them because I think it's a great idea. And then I used to just send it. And then I'm sure people were like, well, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? So I didn't send this message to you, but what I was thinking about was I really wanted to do stuff like that. I really wanted to bring the RMA group more into a therapeutic community level. And then when you were talking about how you were getting, basically certifications in education, I'm like, maybe that could be I'm not trying to just give you more work or something, but I mean, it's definitely, that would be really cool. Especially if, because I don't have any certifications,
We should go get some.
I want to.
I don't have a certification yet. But what I think you guys are very well qualified to do are to provide people with resources and direction. Here's where you can go.
Thank you.
Not a mental health or a medical professional, but here's what worked for us. Here's where to point you.
Yeah. Right. Let's do that. I mean, let's get that together. I think that would be really, that'd be awesome. You could not just help other people, but help myself. I mean, a lot of this, I get a lot out of it, like Dave from Dopey, I was talking to him about, the show sort of helping my recovery. And he was very adamantly telling me, no, my show is not for my recovery.
I've heard him say that before about him and his show. And I disagree.
It's got to have that effect though.
Yeah. Well, his what he told me was, for Chris, it was his program, and look what happened. Okay. And that's the way he's feeling about it. But I feel like it, maybe that's just a reaction or PTSD reaction to it, and I get it. But it has to help you. I mean, talk about keeping recovery front of mind. For me, this is really helping. And so
maybe his point, because he seems like a proponent of the 12-step model.
Oh, yeah.
He talks about the regular meeting he goes to. And so maybe it's not his sole program or his only program, but I would argue that podcast is doing something for him.
Absolutely.
Great.
I think so.
But I think we got to wrap it up. Grant, thank you so much for coming on the show. See, it wasn't so bad.
And I didn't give a plug for Sober Linings Playbook.
Sober Linings.
Thank you guys for plugging that.
Plug it again.
Yeah, SoberLiningsPlaybook.com. It's where, I share, and sometimes I actually use some of the stories, but it's where I share the news clips now. I figured it was easier to put it on a website, and more streamlined than sending emails to everybody. If you want all the news and podcast reviews and stuff like that,
all the news.
SoberLiningsPlaybook.com.
And it's
all right.
It's
well, it was a pleasure. And at some point, I would like it to make it to whatever, I know you don't name the city, but the place where you're at. So someday, maybe I will come there to your little studio. But thanks so much for having me on. It was a pleasure, and I'm so glad I found you all.
Thanks for taking the time, Grant. We really appreciate it, and I think your story is going to help a lot of people. So thank you.
You're the best, and we'll see you on the private group.
All right.
All right.
And buy a shirt, everyone.
Buy a shirt.
All right. Talk to you later, Grant.
All right. Talk to you later. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye. Boom.
If anybody deserves a free shirt, it's that guy.
He does. He needs 3 free shirts. Yeah. We're going to continue on with the show, even though we're going long. And I need to...
We'll be back after these words.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back, unburdened by middle-age problems.
That was
Isn't
cool.
it great when you have guests that are articulate, that can tell a story that,
Yeah, Grant was awesome.
Yeah.
When we start our own podcast channel, he's going to have his own podcast.
He definitely needs his own show.
Yeah.
No question. Why do people want to come and sit in this room and talk to us? Because I get the same thing. Joseph Naus is like, I'll come to you guys, and I'm looking around like, we better put up like a stick up or something in here. Like,
just to be clear, we want to meet and interview Joseph Naus like a lot, but we are very insecure about our surroundings here.
Oh, yeah.
So, Joseph, if you're listening, we really want to talk to you. I want your autograph.
We'll come to your hotel room if you come to New York.
We're trying to figure it out, though. We'd be very excited. But thank you, Grant. If you want to talk to Grant or, ask him something or whatever, go to our private group. If you go to our Facebook page on Facebook and you go to groups.
That's where you find it.
Yeah, you can find it, and then you ask to join, and then we decide if, we have a few questions. Just make sure you're listening to the show and you're interested in recovery and you're not like a weird bot from Paraguay or something.
Yeah, any negativity will be dealt with severely.
Yes, it will. One thing I wrote a whole bunch of stuff about this, but I've decided against reading it. But I just wanted to say there was some kickback to we reported on the Dopey Nation.
Oh God, we're going down that road.
Yeah, just a little bit because I just want to make something clear. Because I heard from someone from Dopey Zoom that was pretty incensed about the way I guess we characterized Dopey Zoom. It was not my intention. I find Dopey Zoom to be a very safe place. We've been sort of a Dopey fan podcast a little bit, and I thought it would have been, funny and interesting to the Dopey fans to sort of hear, but what I realize is it's a lot like a family, and when there's problems in your family, people don't want you talking about it, in public. And so I'm sorry for that. And if you're interested in Dopey Zoom, it's great. Look, there's always going to be personalities conflicting no matter what group you're in. It is a safe place. They've got a Dopey Dharma or recovery Dharma meetings. They've got all kinds of stuff, but it also includes 12 steps. So, you choose your meetings accordingly, but
pick your poison.
Right. So that's all I'll say about that. And that brings us to a very long show. Thank you, Grant. And
it's not his fault.
Well, it was your fault because you just kept asking questions.
No, that's the whole point of an interview.
Honestly, we could have done 2 or 3 hours with Grant.
I know.
Maybe we'll do a series, the Grant series.
Yes.
What does that bring us to?
I guess it's time for recovery in the news.
Yeah. All right. Recovery in the news. Recovery in the news. Recovery in the news. Motherfucker.
Okay, so we got an article from Salon.com. Do you remember them?
I
from
do.
The early days of the internet. They were they came out of The Well. Did you know what The Well was?
I don't know.
It was John Barlow and a couple other people started this. I don't know. It was an early sort of internet forum where people would get back when people thought that the internet could be used to communicate creatively and with deep intellectual rigor.
Right.
They created this spot called The Well where people would.
Was that a news group? Do they call those?
No,
news
it wasn't
groups?
a news group, but you had to be invited in, and it was some thought leaders who would get together. And anyway, so that evolved into Salon.com, and now it's which was purchased by some other media outlet, and now we have the Salon.com we have today. So that was completely unnecessary. Anyway, the article this week is called "The Rise of Harm Reduction in the War on Drugs" from Salon.com, published on 8/9/21 or 9/8/21. Excuse me. The war on drugs may profess to be waged against narcotics, but it overwhelmingly targets people, a view increasingly shared by experts on drug use. Nora Volkow, director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, touched on this recently when she wrote about addiction stigma, noting that societal norms surrounding drug use and addiction continued to be informed by myths and misconceptions. Starting in the 80s, a rowdy group of individuals began advocating for a different approach to drug policy called harm reduction, which focuses on the harms of drug use, not the drugs alone. So Mia Slavitz's new book, Undoing Drugs, The Untold Story of Harm Reduction and the Future of Addiction, is an in-depth history of a powerful idea, exploring the many angles of drug policy, including prescription drug use, supervised consumption, and legalizing cannabis.
Ooh, interesting.
Throughout, she also details the racial inequities and social justice tensions that have defined the drug war. So, harm reduction, of course, has many different definitions depending on who you ask. Radical empathy, which requires meeting people where they're at. But it really applies to the core of the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm to addiction treatment and drug policy, which takes the focus off the substance itself and puts it onto the use. So tracing the roots of the movement, Solvitz introduces us to characters like the Goddess of Harm Reduction and Johnny Appleseed of Needles, whose lives are dedicated to spreading evidence-based practices of harm reduction. So you have this whole, tension in the drug recovery movement, or the drug interdiction movement, and we've spoken of this before. Like, on the one hand, you have people who are doing needle exchanges and things like that, providing spaces to shoot up, and then the other side, you have the war on drugs. People who are going after the supply side, right? So
like Venezuela, they just murder drug dealers.
Yeah. So, but apparently you cut off half my article here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
you were going to read the whole thing.
I'm just riffing.
Yeah,
Apparently, harm reduction is finally getting the acceptance that it hasn't had over the past 30 years. And
it seems that way.
More places that are popping up and more acceptance among the community, even in the law enforcement communities, to things like needle exchanges and so on.
Yeah, and all of these medications and treatments did not exist when the Big Book was written, folks.
The Big Book? What's that?
The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, when it was written, Bill even writes in it, there's no, magic pill, or there's no treatment for treating this right now. I mean, he specifically kind of opens it up to future developments, and I feel like we've learned a thing or two, and we've developed and studied a thing or two that may actually help. And we're finding that in some of these medications and these treatment methods are really effective. The one thing I heard about recently, have you heard about where I forget what they call the therapy, but it's like where they pay people to stay sober?
Yes.
What is that called?
I forget.
It's a new controversy that has come out, and I think is really interesting. Remunerating people when they, I guess, have negative test results and things like that.
It's proven effective in some of these studies. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's weird.
I mean,
you pay your kid for an A sometimes, or sometimes if I'm really desperate to get my son to do something like, be nice to his grandma, I'll slip him a $5 bill.
But the amount of money in these studies, if I remember correctly, it wasn't a lot of money. So, when you were in the throes of active addiction, and somebody offered you $10 not to do heroin that day, what would you have thought about that?
I would think, where can I get $10 worth of heroin?
Right. So I don't know.
But what do I know?
Yeah.
I just work
here.
Here.
That's sort of recovery in the news.
In the news. Yeah.
You don't do it on the back end.
I don't do anything on the back end. I'm not into that.
Oof. It's a long morning. Yeah. Oh, wait, shit.
This Week in Weird.
Okay.
By Tim Banal. Forgetful ghost hunters accidentally spark bomb scare at British Museum. This is my new favorite thing, stories about when ghost hunters do something horribly wrong.
Fall through roofs.
Yeah, fall through roofs, spark bomb scares. Yeah. A group of absent-minded ghost hunters caused a bit of panic at a museum in Britain after they accidentally left behind a piece of equipment from their paranormal investigation, and some suspected that the odd device could have been a bomb. The weird incident reportedly occurred this past Saturday at Trews Yard Fisher Folk Museum.
What the hell is that?
I don't know, but I want to go there, which is a site dedicated to celebrating and preserving the remnants of an 18th century fishing community.
Sounds fascinating.
Riveting. Being that the weekend was the start of England's Heritage Open Days, which is a countrywide series of cultural events, the mood at the museum should have been rather jubilant, were it not for a mysterious box discovered on the premises. Taking to Twitter on Tuesday.
Taking to Twitter on Tuesday.
There's some alliteration there. The museum shared a picture of the puzzling device, which is emblazoned with the words paranormal technology, finding the truth.
Real scientists always write on their machines with their...
And explain that they found it in one of their restored cottages over the weekend. They went on to lambast whoever had left the box behind, explaining that it was a fire hazard, and then asked them to come and collect the odd object. While some may have found the mistake slightly amusing, the museum indicated that they considered it no laughing matter. Quote, It might seem pretty harmless, they wrote, but it meant our poor staff had to search the rest of the premises and make the decision at the end of the busiest
You're alienating
day of the year.
our British listeners.
Sorry. And plus, I went into an Australian accent a little bit, so I really
I don't know what that was. Cockney.
Right. Whether he called the police because it could have been an explosive device. Yeah, so ghost hunters just like...
Yeah, clean up after yourself. Bring your phony equipment home
please,
when you're done with it.
Please, you guys, especially, you can't be an absent-minded ghost hunter. You know, you have to be on top of things. Anything can happen when hunting ghosts.
Right.
And, you know, we're pulling for you guys. So This Week in Weird, little week this week. That about does it for today. We had a great time as always.
What accent was that?
That was just...
That about does it for today. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks so much for listening. Visit us at middleagesrecovery.com, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Facebook.
What's a Cobcast?
Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, and tweet us at twat you twit. Support your favorite show. Drop a 5-star review. Join our private Facebook group. Buy a t-shirt or simply write and say hello. We'd love meeting new Monksters and chopping it up on the Facebook group. And finally, the best way to help the show is to...
Tell a friend.
Tell a friend. Share it with a friend. If you get something out of our show, please share the love and help grow the RMA movement. Visit SoberLiningsPlaybook.com to see Grant's awesome news website. And as we say, non proficiat perfecti.
It's progress, not perfection.
See you next time.
Be good. Bye.